He walked in a prince and left looking like a headline. One tight-lipped exit, less than an hour behind closed doors, and the internet decided the meeting was a flop. If the photos told a story, it wasn't reconciliation. It was rejection. This video breaks down what really happened at Clarence's house, why the timing mattered, who was reportedly in the room, and how a 20-minute conversation, if that, turned into a global PR chess match. Let's start with the exit, because that's what set everything on fire. Some tabloids tried to spin it sugary. Harry leaves smiling. Others framed it as humble. But the lens doesn't lie. The jaw was tight. The eyes were stormy. The energy was not tea and mended bridges. It was the look you see on someone who just lost an argument and realizes the receipts aren't coming. Rain streaked the car window like the weather itself was heckling him. If optics are currency, this was expensive. How long did the meeting last? Reports pegged the total visit at around 55 minutes. But here's the part the headlines buried. Insiders say almost half of that went to routine security protocols, sign-ins, checks, the usual palace choreography. If true, that leaves something like 20-ish minutes of actual FaceTime. 20 minutes. That's enough for a few pleasantries, one difficult ask, and a very polite no. Not exactly the stuff of epic reconciliation arcs. So what was the real agenda? People close to the palace don't think this was just a courtesy call. The whispers were loud: money, titles, and security. In that order, let's unpack the security piece first because it's been a core fight. Prince Harry challenged the UK government over the decision that he shouldn't receive automatic police protection when visiting Britain after stepping back as a working royal. In 2024, a UK court dismissed his challenge. Whatever you think of the merits, the result complicates any return trips and inflates costs. Bottom line, if he wants full state-level protection on UK soil, the path is legally and politically narrow. Money? That one's even messier. There's no straightforward mechanism to dip into the sovereign grant for a non-working royal's private arrangements, and the optics would be radioactive in the UK press. Any support would likely have to be personal, quiet, discretionary, and easy to deny. If Harry went in hoping for a financial bridge, legal fees, enhanced security, or spillover support, he didn't leave waving a check, and then we arrive at titles. Archie and Lilibet became prince and princess following King Charles's accession, consistent with established conventions. The palace updated their styles in 2023, but title clarity isn't the same as title utility. What matters is how those titles are used, how they're perceived, and whether they translate into real-world positioning for the Sussex brand. If you suspect titles were on the conversation list, you're not alone. Now to the room itself. Multiple outlets hinted that Queen Camilla was present. Quietly, not dominating, but very much there. That detail supercharged the online reaction. In Spare, Harry criticized Camilla and suggested she traded stories to improve her image. True or not, that history colors any encounter. Picture the scene: Harry on one side, Charles on the other, Camilla as a silent witness. If you're trying to negotiate sensitive asks, that is a heavy table to sit at. Cue the meme factory. The US entertainment press leaned romantic, warm welcome, hopeful tone. UK commentators went forensic. Do the math. If there were fewer than 20 minutes of substance, how much healing can happen between sips of Earl Grey? Social feeds went full gladiator. Side-by-side screenshots of Stormcloud Harry in the car versus smiling for cameras Harry, later at an Invictus reception, ricocheted across timelines. The caption energy was brutal. This looked less like peace and more like public posture. And that contrast? It made everything worse. Minutes after Clarence's house, Harry had to turn on the charm at a high-spirited Invictus event. The smile was there. The lighting was perfect. But side by side with that exit shot, even the friendliest observers noticed the emotional whiplash. The comments wrote themselves. If this was reconciliation, it steeped for less time than the tea. Meanwhile, Clarence's house played a classic card. Silence. No statement. No counter-briefing. Just carefully chosen photos of the king meeting well-wishers, projecting calm continuity. The message was subtle and devastating. Nothing to see here, Britain is fine. The palace's unwritten motto, never complain, never explain, works best when your opponent can't resist narrating their side. Stay still long enough and your silence becomes a statement. The optics crown you the adult in the room, which is why the leak wars matter. With the Sussexes, sympathetic narratives often arrive after the fact. We tried. We hoped. We were blindsided. We're heartbroken but open to healing. That strategy resonated after Oprah, but the palace is wiser now. Keeping Camilla in the room if that happened wasn't just etiquette, it was insurance. Any future, he said, can be quietly balanced by a "she was there." You can't out-PR a witness. The deeper sting is the timing. Hollywood cares about leverage. The Sussex value proposition to streamers and publishers has been access, credible proximity to the firm. But if the public takeaway is that Harry couldn't even secure a friendly half-hour with his father, what's left to package? The content pipeline gets thin when the storyline is rejection. Even sympathetic industry voices started asking the unaskable, how many series can you sell about doors that stay closed? Let's zoom out. This is bigger than one frosty meeting. Royal watchers have seen this movie before. Diana's glacial encounters, Sarah Ferguson's cold corridors, the institution outlasting individual storms through ritual, routine, and relentless forward motion. When you center stability, you force every other player into reaction. The Sussex's greatest asset, narrative control, always runs into the palace's greatest strength, refusal to engage, back to the shopping list framing that set social media ablaze. Was there really a list? We don't know. But the perception stuck because it felt plausible. Legal cases are costly. Security is complicated. Deals fluctuate. Titles matter in branding. Put those ingredients together and you get a story the internet loves. A prince who walked in expecting yes and walked out carrying no. If that's unfair, it's also sticky, and sticky stories win online. So what actually got decided? Here's the most plausible read, based on public reports and precedent. Security, unchanged. The court ruling stands. Any enhancements would be private and temporary, not structural. Money. If any offer was made, it was private and limited, nothing visible enough to change the optics. Titles. No revocations. No new commitments. Status quo relationship, cordial but cool. The Crown projects normality. The Sun projects disappointment. And Meghan? The internet rushed to storyboard her off-camera role. The anxious call, the tough questions, the "did he promise anything?" Beats. Harsh jokes aside, that narrative exposed a real tension. If Harry looks like he's negotiating a loan for a family of 4, every public setback becomes a private burden. It's a miserable place to be, strategically and personally. There's one more layer, Invictus. Harry's most respected initiative thrives when he looks grounded, purposeful, and above the noise. Unfortunately, the Clarence house optics bled into those frames. Forced cheer is still cheer, but in an era of split-screen judgment, the contrast becomes its own headline. Even his supporters were left wishing the meeting had been scheduled after the reception, not before it. What happens next? Expect dueling narratives, soft-focus US features about hope and healing, sharper UK columns about lines that won't be crossed. Expect body language breakdowns, timeline dissections, and a drip of sources say pieces that quietly try to reframe the outcome. The palace will likely keep its nerve and its silence, and we'll all keep reading the photos like tea leaves. Here's the hard truth. When your humiliation becomes memeable, it calcifies. It stops being gossip and becomes culture. Charles looks steady. Camilla looks strategic. Harry looks shut out. That image can be moved, but not easily, and not with one more sit-down. So where does that leave the Sussex story? If the goal was leverage, money, security, or symbolic support, the optics say it didn't land. If the goal was reconnection, 20 minutes won't do it. If the goal was simply to show up and try, then yes, a door was knocked. But the door didn't swing open. Maybe that's the real takeaway. The monarchy's power isn't force, it's patience. It outlasts. It keeps the schedule. It lets other people leak. And it wins the quiet war of pictures. What do you think actually happened in that room? Was this a principled line from the palace, or a mischance?